I'm Mike Vardy.
Meal planning is important because it prevents us from being a disappointed wreck when dinner time comes around and we have no clue what to make, or even if we have the ingredients to make the meal. It's a time and a money saver, but most importantly, it frees up valuable brain space. Creating a meal plan prepares us for the week to come and gives us peace of mind that we're organized and can feed ourselves and our family. That's why I do it, and that's why Plan to Eat helps me do it. Your subscription includes access to the Plan to Eat website and fully featured mobile apps on iOS and Android. And Plan to Eat gives you the tools to clip and organize recipes from any website, the ones your family loves and that fit your dietary preferences and needs. And you can create a meal plan around your schedule. Then what happens is the Plan to Eat software automatically creates an organized shopping list based on your plan. So sign up for your free trial at plantoeat.com/timecrafting. That's plantoeat.com/timecrafting. The coupon will be automatically applied to your account and can be used when you're ready to subscribe. It's valid for new customers only. Give Plan to Eat a try today.
And this is the Productivityist Podcast. Welcome to the Productivityist Podcast. I am Mike Vardy. Welcome back for yet another week. The last week that we are doing these on a Thursday release. As of November, or Nowvember, as I like to call it, we will be moving the weekly podcast to Friday releases. That way you have the whole weekend to listen to the entire episode. And this week I've got a great guest for you. I had the opportunity to meet him at Podcast Movement, although our virtual paths had crossed before. At Podcast Movement, not this year, but the year prior. So the first Podcast Movement. And I'm really, really happy to have him on because he's got a new book out with a special offer that we'll get to at the tail end of the show. But let's just not take any more time. Let's just dive into it because we got a lot to talk about. Cesar Abeid, right? I got that right.
Yes.
I got that right. I often ask everybody before the show, I'm like, because I just call you Cesar. So I don't really go, hey, hey, Mr. Abeid. I don't really do that, right? So, Cesar, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Vardy. And that, as they usually say, it did well. You're in the top 10%.
There we go. It's funny because Productivityist is hard for people to pronounce. So
I won't even try it. The Mike Vardy Show.
Yeah, there you go. Fellow Canadian, which is great. So we can go into our natural Canadian speak, and then we'll be all good. The new book, Project Management for You, is out, and or out, and and so the subtitle is How to Turn Your Ideas and Reality into Reality, Deliver on Your Promises, and Get Things Done. Now, what I find interesting about this book is that you actually just skip task management altogether and productivity, and you went with project management. Why did you target that particular in your title? Why did you go down that road in particular, as opposed to kind of going with productivity for you or productivity for the masses? Because you're PM for the masses. That's we'll link to your website in the show notes. Why go right into project management? Do you feel that there's not anything out there that speaks specifically to project management?
Yeah, it's a good question. The thing is, I felt like there was a gap, right? So on one end of the spectrum, you have a lot of talk about productivity, a lot of talk about task management, this app and that app, and best practices and things like that. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have productivity at the corporate level, right? So the ways that companies like Apple and Google and Amazon, the ways that they deliver on their promises, the way they get things done. And it's a very different game, right? But because I am a certified project manager and I had to study the way the big companies do and try to apply it to my small family business, I kind of got this kind of an interesting point of view here, because I had to learn that and I had to try to apply it. And in the process, I learned that it was really, really useful. But a lot of those techniques and tools and methodologies that the big companies are using, we don't know about. We, the small business or the solopreneur, people just trying to get things done and do things and deliver on our promises. So the idea of the book is, okay, how can we learn from the discipline of project management, but trying to strip away the lingo and the corporate language and try to get to the nucleus, if you will, of what it is, so we can apply that to our own personal projects and also to our small business projects, so we can do not just project management, but we can take the ideas for new products and services and or a book, for example, and using a method, using a system, using no guesswork. How can we do like the big companies do and deliver on that promise every single time?
And the thing about project management that I always mention when I'm talking to people about the idea of task management versus project management, pretty much everything's a project when you break it down, right? Like, I mean, there are very few things that, I mean, I was talking to a client today even, and they said they were putting something in their task list, and they said, review, report, and then email. I'm like,
Yeah.
No, those are two separate things. You're like, well, what do you mean I have to review it and then I have to send? I'm like, anytime you've got this and, or this qualifier that kind of says there is more than one step to this thing, then it's a project. How do you deal with that? Not just in the book, but just when you're talking to people and on your show and all that. Like, how tough is it to kind of beat this into people that, you know, we manage way more projects than we give ourselves credit for or that we even think about?
Yeah. That's a good question, and I think the first thing we need to do is to define what a project is. You know, if you've talked to David Allen and you know his methodology.
Oh yeah, we're buddies.
You know, Dave.
I've talked to him a bunch of times.
But you know, the way he defines a project is any desired outcome that is a multi-step. You know, it takes multiple steps to achieve, or more than one action, if you will.
Yeah, like driving a car is a project, really, when you break it down.
According to David Allen, yeah.
According to David Allen. I want you to dive deeper into that in a little bit, but let's go back to what you were saying.
Yeah. So, and you know, driving a car, and for something simple like that suffices, right?
Yeah.
But when you start to think about things that are more complex, so let's say you go through your GTD and you figure out that one of your projects is to write a book, and you really want to do that. Let's use that as an example. I mean, it qualifies, right, as a project, according to David Allen, but just figuring out next actions, it's not enough when you get to something that complex.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're going to work with a team. I mean, it's cute to think about just the next action, but you need to do some better planning, because you're going to have to think about budgets and timelines and schedules and things like that, and resource management.
And other people. Yeah,
and other people.
There's going to be waiting for stuff. You're going to be, I mean, you can't just, if the next action isn't available, the project shouldn't stop.
Exactly. And you know, there's much more to it than just next actions. I mean, you can do multiple actions if you're working with a team at the same time. So the next action is maybe 15 actions, you know, done by different people. So that's when project management comes in, you know, and can really help you if you're trying to achieve something that requires multiple steps, but it's a little bit more complex than just thinking about next actions, right? So the definition of a project that you're finding in the book, and you'll find different variations on the same theme in any project management book that you pick up, is any endeavor or initiative that has a definite beginning, a definite end, and creates a unique result or service or product. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when you think about projects that way, as opposed to other types of work that do not fit this description, you start to recognize projects here and there, right? So, for example, I always use the example of Apple, because Apple is, you know, everybody knows about Apple and how great they are in delivering on what they promise. But for example, the creation and the launch of the new iPhone is a project, right? Mm-hmm. The manufacturing and the ongoing support and the iCloud data centers and all that stuff, that's operations. Those are not projects.
Right.
Now, there are projects within the operations work that they do. For example, creating a new data center or expanding the maintenance service or whatever. Those are one-off projects that their operations people need to do,
right?
But it's part of operation, right?
It's like upgrading to El Capitan. Like, that itself was a project, but then the ongoing maintenance thereafter is more just a modality more than anything else, or a role-based initiative.
Exactly. So once you start looking at what's in front of you and things you need to accomplish through this lens, then you start to recognize your projects, right? And once you do, you can apply, something like what I describe in the book to these projects. So you actually move forward into one day delivering on that project, but also with clarity, so you know exactly when that day is going to be, or as close as possible, and how much of your resources is going to take, right, in terms of money and people and things like that. So so you use, for example, I like to say GTD is a very horizontal way of looking at life, because it covers all aspects.
Well, and
personal life.
There's the horizons of focus too, which definitely gives you that
exactly. So
it's right there.
Yeah, exactly. Different ways to look at it in a horizontal way, but basically, just it's a section of your life that. So anything that comes your way, right? Any input that reaches your inbox, that GTD is there to help you. And then you go through the processing your inbox, and you put things away in different containers, and then you have your project list. And then when you're ready to tackle that one vertical of a project, and focus on that one thing, then that's when project management can come in a vertical way. That makes sense.
Well, and that's interesting, because one of the things that I like to focus on is that I think that working by project can be very effective when you need to really hone in on it. Again, working horizontally to say, okay, I'm going to work in this modality, so I'm going to pick up I'm going to go and email 20 people, and they're all for different projects. That's one way to work, and working by priority is probably another way. But I mean, working by project. One of the things that I'd love you to touch on is, how do you keep people, when you in the book? I know you go over this to a certain extent, but how do you keep people from overthinking it? Do you know what I mean? Like either breaking it down too much or not breaking it down enough in terms of like a project. Like we talked about driving of a car, which again is a very glib kind of thing to say, because yes, the reason we can drive a car so easily is because we've been doing it for so long. So it's literally drive the car. In fact, we don't even think of that as a project, because it's not. It's an activity that we do to get from point A to point B. But when we were learning to drive a car, that's a project, right? Like the whole step of getting the driver's license and all that is very different, because you're looking for, like you said, that specific outcome. So how do you kind of keep people, and again, this is the whole for you thing, because I'm sure it's going to be a little bit different for everybody, but what kind of advice do you say for people who are like having a problem either zooming in or zooming out?
Yeah, it's easy. It's a balance. I mean, one thing that we do when dealing with projects, we try to break it down into manageable chunks. Your project might be just so simple that in and of itself is a manageable chunk. So you don't really need to break it down. But that kind of varies from person to person. So in my case, for example, I have a huge problem with complexity. I have a hard time focus. So for me, the more I break things down into simpler parts, the better. Right?
Less overwhelmed, right?
Less overwhelmed. Yeah. So, and one of the aspects of project planning is to break it down, right? So, but where do you stop breaking it down? And that is there's no right answer here. So, as part of these of this breaking down of a project into manageable parts, we do that until we get to a level that we call the work package, and I described that in the book in more detail. But that is the simplest, like that's the atom, I guess, if you will, of that leg of the mind map, if you will. So that is one item that you satisfy now. You don't need to go any further in terms of trying to make it simpler. And the rule of thumb within the project management industry is a deliverable, sub-deliverable, if you will, of this project that you can accomplish in a short period of time, between a day or 1 or 2 weeks, right? So those are kind of some of the rules that you can try to apply. I think the 2 week is too long. So between a day and a week, something that I'm comfortable. Okay, this is something I can handle, right? And if we step back a little bit, the way that we break this down is, so let's say if your project is to get your driver's license, or that's kind of a simple one, but let's say to write a book or to let's say
do a product launch. Let's do a product launch, because you're doing one right now.
Yeah, exactly. So what you do is you take that main idea. If you think of a mind map, right? Take that main idea and then you break it down into the first level of sub ideas, if you will. And this is something that we naturally try to do. I'm sure you, Mike. I mean, you're a pro at this, but I'm sure you've you thought of something that you want to do, and you came to the conclusion, "Wow, this is kind of complex. I need to sit down and write a to-do list."
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Right? Now, and this is us trying to make sense of complexity, trying to break that down. But the problem is, and this is why a lot of people have problems with the to-do list. There's even a guy out there who says we should go beyond the to-do list.
Yeah, that guy's crazy.
His ears are
Hi,
broken.
Eric.
So the problem with that is what we're trying to do is we look at the project, and that is something that we're going to deliver, and that is a thing, that is a noun, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you try to break that down into to-dos, you're trying to break down a noun into verbs.
Yes.
And that doesn't work. And it's like trying to break a pie into cookies, right?
Right.
So what we need to do, we need to break that thing into smaller things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and we do that at the first level, and then the test that we do is once we do that for the first level, if we add all those sub things together, does that make up the main thing? Do they make up the main thing if you add it all up? That's called the 100% rule, right?
Right.
If they do, then you're good. So what you do, you move down to this new level, and you do the same thing for each one of those sub bubbles, right?
Right.
And on and on and on until you get to this what we call the work package, which is something you're happy with in terms of, okay, I don't need to break this down any further. This is manageable now. And the beauty of that is that when we get to that point, it's something that is so simple that you can easily look at it and say, this is something I can delegate,
Mm-hmm.
or this is something I don't know how to do. I better delegate. Or so you can easily figure out what to delegate when it comes to that project. Also, because they are the bottom level, right? If you do each one of those bottom level bubbles, if you will, the project is complete. Doesn't matter how complex it is above that level, because they all together comprise the project, right?
Right.
So all of a sudden, it's easier for you to deal with that complexity because now you're just looking at these individual, discrete work packages. The other advantage of doing that is that because they're so simple, you can estimate duration for them and also cost, right? So if you know it's something you need to delegate, you can ask the person you're outsourcing this to, say, how long is this going to take you? Give me a range. And how much is this going to cost me? Give me a range as well. And if you do that for all the work packages and you add it all up, now you have a schedule, now you have a budget. And now
you can quantify it.
You can quantify it, and you can make that promise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like Apple does. Apple will show you the new iPhone and all the features and say, you'll be able to buy this on this day for this much, at 6 months ahead of time. And it's crazy that they do that, but they are master project managers, and that is the main idea that the corporate world has known for decades, but we can simplify that so we can actually deliver on our book project, on our deck project, on our house project, or whatever it is that you want to do that is a tiny, a tidbit more complex than your average, getting a driver's license project.
Right. I want to touch on, we've talked about work projects, and I think that's important, but the at the top of your book, it says life is a project. You are the manager. How difficult or challenging is it? Because I know I've come across this, even for myself, to get people to treat their personal projects in the same manner that they would treat work projects.
It is a problem. And, my podcast is mostly for the folks in the industry.
Right.
A lot of people with the title project manager, they listen to my podcast. And a lot of them have never heard of GTD, for example. And you can go into a project manager's office and it's a mess, right? And there's a lot of stress.
Teach what you know, right? Teach
Exactly.
what you need to learn the most. That's the phrase.
Right. And not only that, like a project manager's job is by definition cyclical, right? Cyclical,
right.
If you will. So because a project is done and then you need to start a new one, and a lot of people, they fail to see that so is life. Your career is a sequence of projects. It's a sequence of trying to find a new gig, and so it is cyclical as well. And your life and success you have in your life, it also depends on the projects that you deliver. Mike, you and I have a lot of friends in common.
Mm-hmm.
People who are doing really well in this field of podcasting, online businesses and things like that. And I'm sure if you close your eyes, you can think of maybe 3 names that
I
are.
didn't even have to close my eyes.
Yeah. And we can talk about them or not. But what did they do that set them apart is that they were able to deliver something to their audience that people can buy, right?
Yeah.
And that was a project, right? They had a beginning and an end, delivered something. And I truly believe that, yes, being productive is great because we get to do more with less resources, and can be less stressed out and things like that. But focusing on that one outcome, going down that vertical, maybe one at a time, in such a way that you deliver, this project and then that project and that product and that service. I think that takes you so much farther ahead, And I think a lot of folks, they fail to see that, especially people in this industry of project management. They're great at delivering for a client,
right,
or their boss or their company, but their personal life is messy, and they don't see the connection there. That, hey, there are projects that you can do in your personal life, and you have the skill set to do it.
Yeah.
So wake up.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult because most people, what they want to do, and this is, I mean, I'm sure you could speak to this, is they're at work and they're working in one particular type of way, and they get home and it's not that they don't enjoy their job, but they want to escape from that. They want to have their home life, and they say, well, forget all that other stuff that I do at work. I'm just going to, not have the framework at home and be free to do more what I really want to do. But the problem is again, yeah, like if you're going to do a house renovation, that's a project, right? Like if you're going to, we just went through one down here in the house where we had to basically, map that out. And I think, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, at least in your experience, but once you start doing it for both, it becomes easier to do it for both, and you get better at doing it for both, where it's like, okay, you know what? It's Halloween. As we're recording this, it's leading up to Halloween. I have a Halloween project, like get the costume, do this, like it is a project because the outcome is to have a fantastic Halloween. And with 2 small children, I mean, yesterday we put up the decorations as we recorded this, a couple days later than I wanted to, but it's Victoria and it rains at this time of year. In fact, I don't think it stops now until May. But the point is that the outcome was, and this is an interesting sidebar, but the outcome was that my son and I put up the decorations yesterday. Today, it was a very busy day for me. My wife's like, oh, don't worry about cooking dinner, just put fish sticks or whatever. I'm like, no. I've moved this one thing forward, which is the Halloween project. She was very happy about that. But I also have the husband project, like the husband and father project, which is a role I fulfill. I'm like, look, no, you do all this stuff. I'm going to cook the steaks for dinner, which I did just before we started recording. And I said, I can't just be working on what we're working on right now in terms of productivity and stuff. And she pointed out, she said, the fact that you took care of the decorations and the Halloween stuff already for me is a huge, huge help. So I wouldn't have done that if that wasn't in some kind of manageable framework. I would have just waited until, I would have waited until I saw like the neighbors put up their Halloween decorations, or until like, oh crap, tomorrow's Halloween. I better carve that pumpkin, right? So I think, and I want to throw it to you. Like once you start practicing this kind of, you fostering this kind of philosophy or this approach, which you talk about, your particular approach as well as just in general, it makes for just a better overall quality of life. You manage your life project much better.
Yeah, I agree. And we can touch on the whole work-life balance. And I don't know about you, Mike, but I don't have time to live 2 lives,
No.
I'm the same guy at work and at home,
yeah.
and I like it that way. I might be a little bit too informal at work sometimes. I talk about my kids when people don't care.
But I'm also the guy that put out hoses in the middle of winter, like at winter time. I was like, why do you put that in your list? I'm like, because it's part of it's part of my DNA. If I don't do that, then I'm going to forget everything else thereafter. So yeah, you have to be the same person in both. You can't have one foot in one space and one in the other and being completely different people. You don't have harmony that way.
Right. And we keep talking about standing out and trying to do things differently. Here's the way I see what's going on in the world today. I mean, we have all this technology and we have all these things and all these opportunities, but at the same time, there's conformity, right?
Yeah.
And superficiality, right? People just read the headlines and they communicate in 140 characters, and it's become very difficult for folks to focus on a single outcome and deliver on that thing. So if you have this skill set and you start applying to different things in your life, you stand out immediately because you're like a superhero. You know? So why not? Just let's say you're a mailman and you walk. You go for a walk on the weekend. That's what you probably do that really well. You know all the shortcuts.
Especially now that they're going to cancel the mailbox program in Canada that they were talking about, the super mailbox program. But anyway,
or will they?
No, they've suspended it. But anyways, sidebar to non-Canadian listeners.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? So if you have this any skill set that you use at work, why not use that in your personal life? If you flip burgers and you are really good at that, I'm sure, why not do that at home and help your wife? You know what I mean? When you come home from work. And in project management is the same with the caveat that actually, if you start applying that to your personal life and your side projects, and it's really going to propel your life because you're delivering on things when people are watching TV.
Right. Gary Vaynerchuk has this interesting post on Facebook. I'll link to it, where he talks about my New York Jets is your Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it, but he basically says, I work a lot, and the only time you can't touch me is when my New York Jets are playing. But if you are watching House of Cards and watching TV and doing this all the time, and I'm doing this thing, then that's the difference between you and me. And so he's actually, I think during halftime he doesn't do anything either. Like, he basically sits and focuses intently on that game, and then all the other time he's focusing on the task at hand and the project, the projects he's putting forth. Because you look at the stuff he puts out there all the time, like he's doing a Ask Gary V video, which I want to say is like every other day at this point. So I mean, I think that, and I want to throw it to you. We'll shift gears a little bit. If people have their choice, and they don't always have their choice, how many projects do you think people should be optimally, handling in a day? Like, if they have a day that they're looking at and they're like, okay, I'm going to work on X projects today. If they have that choice, do you have a set number? Because people do like to have that quantification of like, I'm going to do these 3 projects today, or I'm going to work on these 8 tasks today. Do you have any kind of, number in mind, or is it not as simple as that?
Yeah, definitely not as simple as that, because it depends on the complexity of your project. It depends on what priority looks like this week, for example. So I use, for my personal stuff, I use OmniFocus, and it's a great way to organize little projects. And I don't even know how many I have in there, but I flag them, on a weekly basis. Okay, these are the ones when I do my reviews, and these are the ones I really need to move forward this week, and I'll flag them. And I think typically there'll be maybe between 8 and 15,
right,
of these projects that are, okay, I need to make some progress, or this one I actually need to complete, by Friday, things like that. It depends on the individual as well. I have very little tolerance for multitasking. I'm easily overwhelmed, so I need to be very conscious about what I decide to tackle on a specific day. Or on a specific week. Like I like to break things down. So other folks I think you have much more bandwidth than I do. We were reviewing the books there before we pressed the record button here. To see what other books are on Amazon next to mine, and you knew the authors' names and all things. I'm like, I don't know any of that stuff.
To be fair, you've been knee deep in writing a book yourself. So let's.
But my point is, we all have different talents, I guess, and depending on how much you can embrace at any single time, that's going to dictate how many projects you can tackle. But the point is, if you have a system, then you can have infinite number of projects, but you're just not going to be able to work on them. On all of them at the same time. So you need to kind of prioritize and focus on specific ones at specific times. And different people use different techniques there, but that's the idea.
So we're pretty much out of time, and I want to make sure people take advantage of the special offer that you've given. Okay, so why don't you share with everybody? Now, this has to happen before the All Hallows Eve is done. I like to say All Hallows Eve. Once Halloween is done, you can't get this deal anymore. So, Cesar, why don't you tell everybody what they can get?
Yes. So what I'm doing here at the end of the month is I'm doing a little bit of, just full disclosure, I'm doing a little bit of an Amazon launch. So I want to do better on Amazon. And I'm actually
You're doing really well right now.
Doing really well.
You're ranking top 10 in all of your categories. So
right. Yeah, including a few days ago, I was actually number one.
You were number one. You were number one in the category of, it was Kindle Store Project Management Business, right?
That is right.
Yeah.
So the deal is this: for the regular price of the Kindle book is $9.99, but for this time until October 31st, you can get it for 99 cents, which is a step above zero. I couldn't go any lower than 99 cents, so that's the minimum I could ask. And if you do buy the book and you send me the proof of purchase or the receipt, then I will send you the audiobook version of the book, which I think for your audience of podcast listeners, that might be the most appealing aspect of the offer. So it's 2 steps. You just buy it on Kindle. Let me know that you did, and I'll send you the audiobook.
And what's the link that they go to kind of the link for the actual book is what is it again? It's
projectmanagementforyou.com, and that will it's just a landing page that I put up.
And it'll take you there. It'll be down to its final hours final days as we publish this. So keep that in mind. And just click to buy it on Amazon, and then you click to send him the receipt, and then boom, audiobook is sent to you. That's pretty awesome. That's a really generous offer, Cesar. I really appreciate it. And where can people find you online, other than of course at once they bought your book and they want to reach out to you more? Where can they find you online?
The best place would be the website for my podcast, which is the Project Management for the Masses podcast. And you can find that at PM, as in Project Management, pmforthemasses.com.
And you're on Twitter as well, right?
I'm on Twitter. You find me at Cesar Abeid. And for all my project management stuff, it's at PM4 TM, as in Project Management for the Masses.
Awesome. Cesar, thanks so much for being on the show this week. And as for everybody else here, I'm so happy you were here. Take advantage of this special offer that Cesar's offering. It's only good until midnight on October 31st. So that's like 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. So for me, it'll be like 9 or 8:59 p.m. Pacific time. So make sure that you take advantage of that right before you get that extra hour sleep, because for anyone that's in North America, or at least most people in North America, not everybody goes out of time zones. I know you and I are, Cesar. We're both in areas where we're going to get that extra hour of sleep. So you could have a whole extra hour to read this book. That could be the thing to do too, right? So thanks again, Cesar, for joining me this week. Thanks to everybody for listening. Again, I'm really, really happy that you've joined me. I want to see you again all next week. Until then, stop guessing and start going. Keep moving things forward. We'll see you soon.